Okay, we're going to start now. Welcome guests to the June 1st Prismo Investor Update, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jason Frame and I oversee communications for Prismo. For convenience, this meeting will be recorded and it'll be on the Prismo website immediately following the meeting. The format of the meeting will be a management presentation for 15 to 20 minutes on each of the company's 3 projects, followed by a question period for 5 to 10 minutes. Please email any of your questions to me at jason.frame@prismometals.com during the meeting, and I'll do my best to have your questions get presented to Prismo management and get answered. Starting the presentation for Prismo will be co-founder and incoming chairman, Mr. Alain Lambert, and I now hand off the meeting to Alain.
Thank you very much, Jason, and thank you everyone for participating. And very first thing to say, the disclaimer, forward-looking statements, it's on our website under the presentation banner. Please read this at your convenience. And I'm going to go to the investment highlights page, which gives a good summary of what Prismo Metals is all about. So if you could move forward a couple slides, please. Thank you very much. So Prismo Metals has a team of successful explorers. So if you want to find large deposits that can be turned into a mine, we feel it's best to have on board people who've already done it. And we have the pleasure today of having 2 of these people. So our President CEO, Dr. Craig Gibson, as well as Steve Robertson, who will be talking about our hot Breccia copper prospect in Arizona. We also have on board as a large shareholder and advisor, Peter McGaw, Max Silver, and other companies, a well-known geologist, and one of his right-hand man, Rafael Gallardo, who's worked with Peter in Mexico for over 20 years. And Rafael was instrumental in assembling one of our projects that Craig's going to talk about called Los Pavitos. There are a number of things that differentiate Prismo Metals from a lot of its peers. And one of them is, as we see underneath the picture of the explorers, is low overhead. No one's on a fixed salary. So you work, you get paid. So when people are in the field, they charge their rate. And as our CEO, Craig, likes to say, our burn rate is $200 a meter. And what he means by that is most of our expenditures are drilling expenditures this year, as we will be drilling each and every one of our 3 properties. As we go through this presentation, it's very important for everybody to know that everything we're going to be talking about is already funded. So it's not a number of projects that we have that, hopefully the market will be conducive to a financing, and then maybe we'll be able to execute. So keep that in mind. Everything that Craig and Steve will be talking about exploration program is fully funded. So we have 3 opportunities. One is silver, Palos Verdes in Mexico, gold in Los Pavitos in Mexico, and hot Breccia, a copper prospect in Arizona. So Palos Verdes and Los Pavitos are fully permitted. We're currently drilling Palos Verdes. We just announced that in the second half of June, we'll be drilling our gold prospect, Los Pavitos. And as you'll hear from Steve, hopefully in Q3 of this year, we'll be drilling hot Breccia. And the last thing I'd like to focus on this slide really is in the box underneath Palos Verdes, the last point, potential discovery with inbuilt exit strategy. And what we mean by that is that this property, Palos Verdes, is completely surrounded by Vizsla Silver. And if we could move to the next slide, please. Vizsla Silver is a shareholder of our company. They invested $2 million in our company in January. They own 9.9%. And then with Vizsla, we also have a partnership. We have a joint technical committee to explore the Panuco district, more specifically the areas around the Palos Verdes concession and the area around it. And Craig's going to be telling more about that in a second. So tight share structure, we've been public for almost 3 years. Management and advisors, we still own 28.1% of the company. As I mentioned, Vizsla owns 9.9%, and 3 institutions that are shareholders of Vizsla invested $3 million back in December, and then together they own 14.3. So we have a low market cap. We're fully funded. Everything, as I mentioned, that we will be doing in terms of exploration of this year is funded. So you basically having 3 projects to be drilled at something less than $10 million market cap if you take out the cash and marketable securities. The marketable securities being shares of Vizsla Silver that we own when we did the strategic partnership with them back in December. January. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. So what you see there are 3 projects and potential announcements laid out for every quarter between now and the end of the year. And it's really meant to highlight the fact that it's going to be a busy year for Prismo from an exploration standpoint, which will result in a busy year in terms of announcements. So to just highlight a couple things, so we have started drilling at Palos Verdes. If you look under the Q2 area, performing trenching at Los Pavitos, and we will start drilling this quarter in June, and on and on and on. And as you move towards the end of the year, then you've got more focus on actual assay results from drilling programs. And if we could move on to the next slide, please, and I'll turn it over to our CEO, Craig Gibson.
Thanks, Alain. I'm going to go briefly through Palos Verdes and the Los Pavitos projects. And starting with Palos Verdes, it's located about 50 kilometers northeast of Mazatlan, and it's well located in terms of infrastructure. It's right on the highway between Mazatlan and Durango, with power right there. It's in a really good mining jurisdiction, the historic Panuco district, which has been producing for several hundred years. And now with the recent activity with Vizsla Silver, it's being reactivated. Can we go to the next one, please? This shows the land position in the district, and the light blue color is Vizsla Silver's concession package, over 6,000 hectares. And the Palos Verdes concession is about 22 hectares in the northeastern portion of the district, the magenta colored area there. And it's an interesting story. We originally picked up the Palos Verdes concession as a private company and had some pretty good results there. And when we were going through the process of starting to go public and all that entails, and the Vizsla Silver came in and picked up 2 large concession packages of concessions that consolidated the district. So basically, since 2019, they've been drilling. They've had great success of about 200 million ounces in silver equivalent resources. And that's mainly on 2 veins in the southwestern portion of the district. And they've been very successful on those 2 veins. Again, a very large resource very quickly. And now they're looking for a 3rd vein, basically, to add to resources. And they have some possibilities on their claim package, but they also saw our results at Palos Verdes, and I think they saw the potential for increasing resources with that concession. So Let's go to the next one, please. This is a geologic map of Palos Verdes. The concession that we control, Palos Verdes, is inside the yellow line. The main feature here is the Palos Verdes vein, which runs from the left center of the figure for 750 meters through the Palos Verdes concession, and then runs off to the northeast onto another concession. And both sides of those are Vizsla Silver concessions. So they surround the Palos Verdes on three sides, the southwest, the northeast, and also the down dip extent, which is the lower right corner of the figure there. So they surround us on three sides. We've done in the past 3,000 meters of drilling that was completed on those areas with the orange circles. We had access only in 2 areas in the past, and we drilled with pretty good results in those areas, but that left 65% of the strike length not having been explored because we didn't have the environmental permit at the time. And we've since got that permit. We've got permitted drill sites, which are the green dots on there. And as Alain said, we've just recently started our 2,500 meter drill program up in the northeastern corner of the vein there, the concession. And I should point out, the size of this vein is comparable to the veins that Vizsla Silver originally were exploring and had great success in. And so we have plenty of room here to make a discovery, and the idea would be hopefully add on to the resources that are known in the district. Let's go to the next one. Moving on to Los Pavitos, it's a completely different story. This project was brought into the company through Dr. Peter McGaw's service company in Mexico. He had picked up a district scale concession. It's 5,300 hectares nearly, but it was very early stage. They had done enough work to show interesting gold values and several shear zones from northeast and northwest trending. So they had enough data to show it was very interesting. This was brought to the company through Rafael Gallardo, who had worked in similar types of deposits. And so they picked this up and did a very little work. And then we put it into Prismo. And if you go to the next one, last year we started a mapping and sampling program over the concession, identified several areas that warranted further work. Here you can see several of those outlined. Santa Cruz and Las Audas are the best ones. But starting this year, we've done detailed work on several of these areas. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see an example of one of those. That we've had several news releases out over the past 3 months and detailing work on each of the target areas. And there'll be more data on the website. But right now, just as an example, this were initial results from Santa Cruz. The purple dots are gold values over 3 grams per ton. We had many of those on the target. They were generally on quartz veins that are about 0.5 meter to 1 meter in width, and a little bit of silver on one of the veins also. We've highlighted 2 main northeast trends there and also a northwest trend. And what's interesting here is these quartz veins are narrow, resistant ridges, basically, that we can sample. And adjacent to that are weathered rock that does not outcrop very well, so it hasn't been sampled. And we've just started a trenching program across this structural zone, starting with this one, Santa Cruz, so we could be able to sample adjacent to these high-grade veins. So that work is in progress right now. First batch of samples went in. We should have some results here within a couple of weeks, I think. So the idea is to try to find a wider, lower grade mineralized zones that could be amenable to open pit mining in the future. And that helps basically advance a project, having a low cost mining method at the start. And you can always look at going underground and high grade veins after that. Let's go to the next one, please. And this shows our environmental permit that we recently received. We have the purple lines are trenches that are permitted. And again, we just started the trenching program last week. It's ongoing right now. And then we have 30 drill sites that are permitted, shown by the green dots. And the idea here is to identify the structural zones and their mineralized width, both on the surface with the trenching and then with shallow drilling. Initially, it'll be very shallow, 50 meters to maybe 100 meters underneath the surface. Make sure we have the orientation of the structures correct and the entire mineralized width known near the surface. And our drill program here, which is planned for after mid-June, probably starting in late June, it'll be 2,500 meters as a start. So again, short holes, shallow holes, so we'll have a number of holes, and then probably take a break for summer. And if with success, of course, we'll probably continue drilling later in the year, potentially for about 5,000 meters on the program this year, but we'll see how that goes. If you look at the next slide here, it gives us an idea of why we're doing this work. Los Pavitos is in the lower right corner of the southern part of Sonora State, near Alamos. Again, very well located, right on a main highway. Goes through the very southern part of the project. Power on the property, and a very friendly mining jurisdiction in Alamos with historic mining and also current mining at the Verdes copper mine just to the northeast. So a lot of activity there, a lot of infrastructure. And one of the main features we like this project and think it could be very, very interesting is because it's in a long trend with the Northwest Sonora gold belt, which is shown in the yellow color. It extends from the Mesquite mine in Southern California through southwestern Arizona and in several hundred kilometers into Sonora, central Sonora. And there's several major mines in that belt in Mexico, in Sonora State. The belt is responsible for probably about 30 to 40 million ounces between resources and past production, with the largest mine being La Herradura, produced about 5 million ounces already, and I think it has about 15 million ounces in resources. And all of these were open pit mines, relatively low grade leach operations, but for instance, Herradura, now they're going underground in high grade veins. And these deposits are classified as a subset of the orogenic model. So they can be very large, relatively high grade narrow quartz veins that can extend to great depth and extend along strike. And the features of the host rocks and the veins themselves are very similar to our project, Los Pavitos. So we originally thought this could be an extension of that gold belt, a couple hundred kilometers undercover, comes back up near Alamos. And basically, based on the work we've done, we still feel that's the case. The types of veins, the vein textures, and the geochemistry of the veins all lead us to believe it's not a classic epithermal vein system. It's a probably an orogenic system. So we're very excited to be able to drill it. Think we have potential for a multi-million ounce discovery here. And I think we can go to the next one, and I'll turn it over to Steve Robertson to talk about hot breccia.
All right, thanks very much, Craig. I've been asked to start off with just a 30-second resume on myself so you know who I am. I'm an exploration geologist by background. I spent 24 years working with Imperial Metals, which is a Vancouver-based copper developer and explorer. The highlight of my career there was doing the deep exploration at Red Chris. So Red Chris is a major mine in northern British Columbia, currently operated by Newcrest, potentially soon Newmont. And we took that from being what everybody thought was a typical little BC porphyry and actually proved that it was a world-class giant. And 5 years ago, I turned entrepreneur, started a company called Sun Metals. We had a nice discovery in northern BC. The discovery hole there was 100 meters of 5% copper. And after merging that company with our neighbor, I went on to start another company called Infinitum Copper. And Infinitum is actually actively exploring a project down in Sonora State in Mexico, but also acquired the Hot Breccia project, which was optioned to Prismo. And when we optioned that project to Prismo, the guys here asked me to come along and oversee the exploration at Hot Breccia, and so I'm a technical advisor to the company. So with that, I'll tell you about where we're exploring. This is the Great Arizona Copper Belt. So Craig just told us about the Carboca orogenic gold belt. We're a little bit further to the east now, and this is truly one of the most productive, most prolific copper belts on the planet. And you can see from the total copper endowment, some of the huge deposits that are located in Arizona. Morenci is the grandpappy of them all, almost 75 billion pounds of total copper endowment. And then just to the north of us is Resolution. This is truly one of the most significant copper discoveries in modern times. It's 60 billion pounds of copper endowment so far. And I think it's going to get a lot bigger than that. This is a project that is still working toward development. It hasn't been actually producing copper yet. So it's got a long history ahead of it. That's very exciting to us because it's only 40 kilometers to the north, and also because of the great similarities between the geologic model at Resolution and Hot Breccia. So you can see on the map, Hot Breccia is very centrally located. It's the blue star right in the middle of the map, and we've got world-class deposits in virtually every direction from us. Next slide, please. So a closer look at the project, you can see the property shown in yellow. That's 1,420 hectares of property. It's very well located in terms of logistics. We've got a major highway, Highway 77, that actually bisects the property. So we obviously have good access. We've got water in the area. That can be a challenge for some projects in Arizona. We're an hour and a half drive from Phoenix, an hour and a half drive from Tucson. So we're very well located. We're well located, but we're not close enough to any major population centers that would be a problem. So this is mining country right where we're at. We've got a smelter that's only 2 kilometers away from the edge of the property, the Hayden smelter. We also have the Christmas mine, which was a historic producer from 1905 to 1981, produced about 25 million tons of 1.8% copper, both from open pit and underground. Very complex history there. And it's a very productive system. We think that that system may tie into the geologic thesis that we've got on our property, and I'll show you how that works on the next slide. Next slide, please, Itzel. And you can see the image on the right-hand side of the slide. This is a geologic cross-section that was produced by Briggs, an author that put together the story of the Christmas mine. And the geology that's shown there is very important. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide where it says Christmas mine, you've got 3 blue units right at the top. Those are carbonates, limestones, and those are the host of some of that high-grade mineralization. The red that's in the middle is the causative intrusive. So that was a porphyry that came in, brought on a whole bunch of hot, acidic, metal-laden fluids, brought all the copper, gold, and silver into the area. It got eventually deposited into the surrounding rocks, most notably those carbonates. Now, on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that the geology has been dropped down. And those blue units are down at depth, and they're masked by the overlying Williamson Canyon volcanics. So those are a group of younger rocks that are sitting up on top of the carbonates, masking what's going on down below. So that's what represents the geology at the Hot Breccia property. When we go and map there, we actually see all these Williamson Canyon volcanics on surface, but we know that there's some great potential in those rocks down below. If we can go to the next slide, please. And this is a couple of images from the local area. The surrounding volcanics, Williamson Canyon volcanics, have these beautiful breccias in them. And there was a guy in 1971 produced a thesis. His name was Larry Barrett, and he went and mapped all the rocks on the Hot Breccia property. Found out that sure enough, we've got all these Williamson Canyon volcanics on surface. But every once in a while, one of these breccias would show up, and you can see in the breccia all these fragments of rocks, and those fragments are largely some intrusive rocks, but also the carbonates, those blue units that we saw in the cross section, ripped up from down below and brought up to surface and frozen so that we could inspect them. And those rocks are highly altered and highly mineralized. So it's proof positive that we have an active and productive hydrothermal system at depth. So after Larry finished his thesis, he went to work for Kennecott. Next slide, please. And over the ensuing decade, during the 1970s, they drilled, I think it's 7 holes here on the property. And sure enough, every time they went down through the overlying volcanics and into the carbonates down below, they found highly altered, highly mineralized rocks down there. And actually, Phelps Dodge has 2 holes on this slide as well that they produced or drilled during that same time period. Unfortunately, the Christmas mine shut down in 1981, and all exploration activity ceased at that point. And there's really been no work done on this property or in this general area since the 1981, I think, was the last drill hole that was put in here. So that's well over 40 years ago. So it's been sitting dormant, waiting for a company like Prismo to come along and do a proper job of the exploration and see if we can fully explore that potential that's down at depth. Next slide, please. So this is just a look at those drill holes that were previously drilled. This is a model, so we're looking up toward the surface that you can see, and then the drill holes are hanging down through that. So it's a good look at where the drill holes are spatially relative to one another. The very interesting thing, the Phelps Dodge drill holes, we do have the information for them. The Kennecott holes that were drilled during that period, we have the geology for the entire drill hole, but only the assays for the upper portion that was in the volcanics. We don't have the assays for the lower parts of those drill holes. So we're still working on trying to see if we can get that information freed up. But we do have the knowledge of one of our team members who generated this project. He actually used to work for Kennecott, and he saw this drill core before it was destroyed and was so impressed by the heavy alteration and mineralization that was in those drill holes that he actually acquired this project. Next slide, please. So this is a photograph that's taken from the heart of the property. You can see the smelter at the Hayden smelter, or the smelter stack at Hayden smelter just off to the west of us there. So our plans for 2023, we've been out on the property doing some sampling and mapping. We've currently got permitting underway, and we expect to actually receive the permits to be able to go ahead and start drilling in Q3 of this year. We're about to embark on a geophysical survey. So one of the great advantages that we have now over 40 years ago when this property was last explored is some of the advances in geophysics that can look deep and help map out those big hydrothermal systems at depth. And we plan to embark on one of those surveys in 2 or 3 weeks' time. And we'll take the results. Those results will help guide our drilling. We plan to start the drilling in Q3 with twinning 1 or 2 of the previous holes just to establish where we're at in the system. And then we'll use all of the information that we've been able to gather. We might actually do some ground-based geophysics. We'll make that decision after we see the results of the airborne survey and be able to map out the program going forward from there. So that's the hot breccia summary. I'll hand it back to back to Jason.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move on to the Q&A portion of the meeting now. I'm going to stay on point with you, Steve, and thank you for the questions that have arrived to me today. And I have 3 for you, Steve. And I'm going to mention the guest or investor's name as well, so they know their questions being addressed today. The first question, Steve, is what is the size and grade potential that you have in mind for hot breccia?
Well, you know, there's an old saying, if you want to go hunting elephants, go to elephant country, and we're certainly in elephant country. There's some absolutely giant deposits in Arizona, and most notably the Resolution deposit that's only 40 kilometers to the north of us. So I would say that the lid is off in terms of the size and grade potential that we've got at hot breccia.
Okay, and there's a question from Susan, and Susan asks, copper price has been soft in the past month or so. Do you think this is the right time to be pursuing a copper project?
I absolutely think this is the right time to be pursuing a copper project. I'm well aware that the prices come off in the last month, but you know, I've been working in the copper business for well over 30 years, and I have never seen the fundamentals to be better than they are right now. We have both a constraint on the supply side, and we have you know, potential robust demand coming at us. And I really think that the supply demand balance is going to be thrown out. You know, we continue to see difficulty on the production of copper from the major mines, both because they're aging and starting to get into lower grade profiles, but also because of a lot of the permitting difficulties that we see, the low discovery rate. There's been very few major deposits that have been discovered in recent years that are heading toward production. And also a lot of the countries that are around the world, you see falling down in terms of their investability. And all of that adds up to constraint on the supply side. On the demand side, of course, we all know about the e-vehicles that are starting to, you know, not only get into greater demand, but they're actually going to be legislated, getting rid of the internal combustion engines and going toward EVs. So all that's going to take a huge amount of copper, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, everything in our society is going toward more and more computerization and automation, and all of that's done on the back of copper.
Okay, and the third question, and it's a two-part question from Derek. Why are you chasing a copper project like Hot Breccia in a mature mining district like Arizona? Wouldn't your odds be better by going off to look for a new discovery in a more unexplored area?
Well, I think that goes back to, well, there's two things with that question. Number one, the potential for further discoveries in Arizona, and then secondly, the attractiveness of the jurisdiction that you're actually exploring in. In terms of the ability to find new deposits in Arizona, there's a lot of untouched ground there. We're in, as I mentioned previously, elephant country, so there's great deposits that have been found, and the, you know, relatively recent discovery of Resolution, I think, is proof positive that there are still some giants out there yet to be uncovered. So I feel very comfortable that the exploration potential in Arizona is still very high. And then we also take a look at the investability of the jurisdiction. I think that when you do go out and explore, and if you're lucky enough to find something, you want to be in a jurisdiction where you've got a half decent chance of being able to permit it and put it into production. And I would say that Arizona ranks right up there as being one of the best jurisdictions that we could possibly be working in.
Thanks for answering those, Steve. And this next question is it pertains to Los Pavitos, Craig, and I'll ask you to answer this. This is from Sam in Mexico City. And Sam asks, how is the availability of rigs in the Sonora state, and when do you expect first assay results?
Oh, I've just been at the Discoveries Conference down here in Mazatlan, and you know, talking to drillers. You know, the business became pretty soft, and the demand became soft at the second half of last year. So right now there's numerous rigs available. You know, there's very few working right now in this part of the country. So there's no problem getting a rig, and any kind of rig we want. So answering the first part, and the assay results, you know, once we get drilling and you know, sampling, basically when we turn in samples, you know, we have assay results within 2 to 3 weeks right now. Same thing with the drill rigs. The demand for assays has backed off a little bit end of last year. So right now it's you know, it's pretty quick. You know, we have continuous assay results for Los Pavitos, and for drilling, of course, that would be, let's see, 1 month after we start the first hole, something like that. We could expect to have results.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for that, Craig. And I'm going to move on to you now, Alain. There's 2 questions that have arrived on Palos Verdes, and the first question is detailed. And thanks, Simon, for this question. And it reads, Vizsla Silver owns 10% of Prismo, and you have established a joint technical committee. How much coordination is there with the Vizsla team for the exploration of the Panuco district to the northeast where Palos Verdes is located?
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason. That's an important question. If we could, if we could go to slide number 8. And while you do that, I think somebody is unmuted. If you could look into this, please. Okay, yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Itzel. So this is the Panuco, the Palos Verdes concession in the Panuco district. And as we stated earlier, Craig optioned this property before Vizsla got into the district, and once Mike Connor and his team at Vizsla assembled the rest of the district, that we became surrounded on three sides, right? So as Craig was saying, on the west side of the concession, on the east side, and then the structure dips down to the southeast onto or underneath the Vizsla Silver concession. So they took a 10% interest in our company. We have provided them with a right of first refusal on the purchase of the Palos Verdes property, and we also have this joint technical committee. And one of the things that's important about this committee is that while us as investors here look at this map and we see a yellow line that describes legally where the boundaries of our concessions are, when you come right down to it, if you're Craig Gibson and people like Steve and Peter McGaw or Jesus Velador, who's the VP Exploration at Vizsla, you can almost and should erase that boundary and look at an exploration program that's purely based on geological data. And the coordination with the Vizsla team is increasing. I know there are frequent meetings and calls. And as we get further into the 2023 program, I think you're going to see even more coordination and in order to extract the best possible value for exploration dollars in that part of the district. As Craig said, it's known that Vizsla is looking for a third discovery. We believe that it's potential here. And one of the things that the relationship struck with Vizsla in January does is that it creates what we would call a alignment of interest. So we own 1 million shares of Vizsla. So we want a discovery there, not only for our shareholders and for our stock, but by the fact that we own 1 million shares of Vizsla, and if they're part of this discovery, we're going to do well in a couple ways. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions, Jason?
Yeah, this is the last question, and then I'll ask you to close the meeting, if you don't mind. Number two is last year, Prismo provided regular updates on the Palos Verdes drilling campaign. What is the plan this year?
Yes, so in 2022, we drilled the west side of the Palos Verdes concession, and we were communicating frequently with investors. I think you can expect the same, not only for our drilling at Palos Verdes, but as well for the Los Pavitos drilling and the hot Breccia. If I could ask you, Itzel, maybe to go to slide number 5 to better answer this question. And remember that presentation that you're looking at is on our website. It can be downloaded. And that, Jason, I believe answers the question quite well, which is these are exploration events. And for each exploration event, though, you can potentially see one press release or maybe two. So with that said, if there are no further questions, Jason?
No, that answers them all.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This is being recorded, as Jason said, and it will be uploaded on our website probably before the end of today. And we like to thank you for your continued support. Thank you very much, everybody.